cannot believe what I just witnessed on SmackDown, and if you're not absolutely livid about how this segment went down, then you clearly don't understand what just happened to the supposed face of WWE. Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare, the man who finished his story, the guy who WWE has been shoving down our throats as the next John Cena, just got booed out of the building. Not polite golf claps with a few scattered boos mixed in. Not a divided reaction. I'm talking about full-throated, organic, "We are done with you" boos from a crowd that is supposed to be on his side. And the absolute worst part? WWE and Cody himself seem completely shocked that this is happening. Like they have zero self-awareness about why the audience is turning on their golden boy. But I'll tell you exactly why it's happening, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand why this is the beginning of the end for Cody Rhodes as a babyface unless WWE makes some major changes immediately. Let's set the stage for what went down because the context here is absolutely critical. Drew McIntyre has been on an absolute rampage lately, cutting some of the most personal, vicious promos we've heard in years. And last week, Drew crossed a line that even I thought was too far when he brought up Dusty Rhodes and specifically mentioned the watch that Cody wears to honor his late father. Now, that watch isn't just some accessory. It's not just a piece of jewelry. That watch represents Cody's entire legacy, his connection to his father, everything he's been fighting for in his career. So when Drew McIntyre mockingly referenced it, suggesting that Cody is riding his father's coattails and using Dusty's memory as a crutch, that should have been the spark that ignited the most intense, emotional response we've seen from Cody in years. But here's what actually happened on SmackDown, and this is where everything went completely off the rails. Cody comes out to address Drew's comments, and instead of the crowd rallying behind him, instead of the audience being on his side because Drew attacked something sacred, they booed him. Loudly, consistently, undeniably. And Cody's response? He tried to smile through it. He tried to do his usual shtick of acknowledging the crowd and playing to them, but it wasn't working. The more he talked, the louder the boos got, and you could see in his eyes that he was genuinely confused about why this was happening. Here's my first question for you, and I want completely honest answers in the comments. When did you personally start getting tired of Cody Rhodes as WWE Champion? Or are you still fully behind him? Because this reaction didn't come out of nowhere. Now, let's talk about why the crowd is turning on Cody, because WWE's creative team seems to be operating in an alternate reality where they don't understand basic audience psychology. Cody Rhodes won the WWE Championship at WrestleMania in one of the most emotional, satisfying moments in recent wrestling history. He finished his story. He accomplished his goal. He avenged his loss from the previous year. It was perfect. It was complete. It was the ending we all wanted to see. And that should have been the moment where Cody's character evolved, where he transitioned from the hungry challenger to something different as champion. But what has Cody's title reign actually been? It's been him cutting the same promos he was cutting before he won the belt, having the same matches he was having before, showing the same intensity and emotion about defending the title that he showed about chasing it. There's been zero character growth, zero evolution, zero acknowledgement that winning the championship should fundamentally change who you are as a performer. Cody is playing the exact same character he was playing 2 years ago, and the audience is bored. They're bored of the same speeches about legacy and honor and finishing the story. They're bored of the predictable match formula. They're bored of Cody Rhodes. And these boos are their way of telling him that. And you know what makes this even more frustrating? Drew McIntyre is giving Cody the perfect ammunition to show some edge, to show some darkness, to evolve into something more interesting. Drew is attacking his dead father's legacy. That's nuclear heat. That's the kind of personal attack that should turn even the most honorable babyface into someone consumed by rage and vengeance. But instead of Cody showing that fire, instead of him promising to destroy Drew McIntyre in the most brutal way possible, he gave us another sanitized, PG-rated promo about respect and doing things the right way. The crowd doesn't want to see Cody be respectful right now. They want to see him be furious. They want to see him promise violence. They want to see him acknowledge that Drew crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed, and that there will be consequences that go beyond a regular wrestling match. But WWE is so committed to keeping Cody as the squeaky clean hero that they're willing to let him get booed, rather than let him show any moral complexity or emotional depth. Let me ask you this. What should Cody's response have been to Drew's comments about Dusty's watch? How would you have written that promo? Drop your answers below because I guarantee half of you could write something better than what we got. Now, let's talk about the actual content of Cody's promo when he finally did fire back at Drew, because this is where things went from bad to worse. Cody talked about how his father taught him to take the high road, how Dusty would want him to beat Drew in the ring rather than sink to his level, how the championship means more than personal vendettas. And with every word, with every platitude, with every reference to honor and integrity, the boos got louder. Because the audience isn't buying it anymore. They don't want a champion who turns the other cheek. They don't want a champion who's more concerned with being a role model than with defending his family's honor. What made this even more painful to watch was that you could see Cody trying to adjust in real time. He'd pause, waiting for the cheers that never came. He'd emphasize certain words differently, trying to get the reaction he wanted. He even acknowledged the boos directly at one point, asking the crowd what they wanted from him, which is always a dangerous move because it breaks the fourth wall and exposes that you're not getting the reaction you expected. And when a babyface has to ask the crowd why they're booing, you've already lost the battle. The sad irony is that Drew McIntyre, who's supposed to be the heel in this feud, was getting more positive reactions than Cody in some segments. Drew's promos have been intense, personal, and real in a way that connects with audiences even when he's saying terrible things. He's showing vulnerability by talking about his own struggles, his own failures, his own journey to redemption. Meanwhile, Cody is giving us the same generic babyface promos we've heard 1,000 times, and the audience is smart enough to recognize. Here's what really gets under my skin about this whole situation. WWE has done this exact same thing before. They've taken a white-hot babyface, kept them as champion too long without any character development, refused to acknowledge that the audience was turning on them, and then acted surprised when the boos became impossible to ignore. We saw it with John Cena for years. We saw it with Roman Reigns before his heel turn. We saw it with Hulk Hogan in the mid-90s. This is a pattern that WWE keeps repeating because they're more concerned with protecting their investment in a specific performer than they are with listening to what the audience actually wants. And before any of you accuse me of being a hater or jumping on a bandwagon, let me be very clear. I was one of Cody Rhodes' biggest supporters during his journey back to WWE. I cried when he won the championship at WrestleMania. I defended him against people who said he was overrated or that his promos were too theatrical. I wanted Cody to succeed because his story was compelling and his in-ring work has always been excellent. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that his title reign has been good just because I liked him before. That's not honest criticism, that's being a mark. Drop a comment and tell me, is Cody Rhodes the problem? Or is WWE's creative direction for him the problem? Can this be fixed? Or is it too late? The watch situation specifically is what really exposes the disconnect between what WWE thinks is good storytelling and what actually resonates with modern audiences. Using a deceased family member in a wrestling storyline is always risky, always controversial, and should only be done if you're willing to go all in on the emotional intensity it requires. You can't have Drew McIntyre mock Dusty Rhodes' memory and then have Cody respond with a measured, diplomatic promo about being the bigger person. That's not satisfying. That's not cathartic. That's just frustrating. If you're going to invoke Dusty Rhodes, if you're going to make that watch a central plot point in this feud, then Cody's response needs to match that intensity. He should be cutting promos where his voice cracks with emotion. He should be threatening Drew in ways that make the audience genuinely believe he might lose control. He should be showing us a side of himself we haven't seen before, a darker edge that comes out when someone attacks what he holds most sacred. Instead, we got corporate-approved talking points that could have been written by AI. And you know what makes this even more frustrating? Cody Rhodes is capable of so much more than what we're seeing. His promos in AEW showed incredible range. His work as a heel earlier in his career proved he can play morally complex characters. The man has the talent to evolve beyond this one-dimensional heroic character, but WWE won't let him because they're desperately trying to create their next mega babyface, and they think that means keeping him wholesome and uncomplicated. But the audience in 2026 is too sophisticated for that. We don't want heroes without flaws. We don't want champions who always do the right thing. We want complex, three-dimensional characters who make mistakes, who struggle with moral ambiguity, who feel real. Drew McIntyre feels real right now, even as a heel. Cody Rhodes feels like a corporate creation, and that's why he's getting booed. Let me ask you something else for the comments. If you were booking this feud, would you turn Cody heel, or would you try to salvage his babyface run by adding more edge to his character? What's the move here? The crowd reaction on SmackDown should be a massive wake-up call for WWE, but I'm genuinely worried they're going to ignore it or try to gaslight the audience into thinking it wasn't as bad as it actually was. They'll probably have their commentary team mention that Cody has passionate fans on both sides, or that not everyone agrees with how he handles adversity. They'll try to spin the boos as anything other than what they actually are, organic rejection of a character that has overstayed its welcome in its current form. What WWE should do is have an emergency meeting about Cody's character direction. They should watch the tape from SmackDown, acknowledge that something isn't working, and make real changes to how Cody is presented. Maybe he starts showing more aggression. Maybe he cuts a promo where he admits that Drew got under his skin and he's struggling with the temptation to cross lines he normally wouldn't cross. Maybe he actually loses to Drew in a shocking upset, but which would immediately make him more sympathetic and give him something to chase. They'll keep Cody on the same trajectory. They'll have him beat Drew clean in their match, and they'll hope the boos go away on their own. And they won't. They'll get louder. They'll spread to more cities. And eventually, WWE will have no choice but to acknowledge that their top babyface champion is being rejected by the very audience he's supposed to represent. The tragedy of all this is that it didn't have to be this way. Cody's championship win could have been the beginning of an incredible run with proper character development. Instead, it's looking more and more like the peak of his babyface run, with everything since being a slow decline into audience apathy and eventual hostility. And that's not Cody's fault as a performer. He's doing exactly what he's being told to do. This is a creative failure, a booking failure, a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes wrestling characters work in the modern era. The watch, Dusty's watch, should be the emotional anchor of this entire feud. Every promo should reference it. Every intense moment should tie back to it. Cody should be cutting promos where he takes off the watch, looks at it, and talks about what his father would think about Drew's disrespect. That's compelling television. That's the kind of storytelling that creates genuine emotional investment. Instead, it's being treated like just another talking point in a generic rivalry. Drew McIntyre is having the best run of his entire career right now. Do you think WWE will actually make changes to Cody's that feel dangerous and unpredictable, or will they Cody Rhodes stick to their neutral regardless of audience reaction week after week? History suggests contrast is making Cody look even worse. I want to know what you think, because the audience can see in real time what compelling character work looks like versus what safe, corporate-approved character work looks like. If this feud ends with Cody beating Drew clean, shaking his hand afterward, and everyone moving on like nothing happened, it will be one of the biggest creative failures in recent WWE history. You cannot invoke someone's deceased father, you cannot make that the centerpiece of your feud, and then resolve it with a handshake and mutual respect. That's not how human emotion works. That's not how storytelling works. That's creative cowardice. What this feud needs is consequences. Real, lasting consequences that fundamentally change at least one of these characters. Either Cody needs to show a darker side that he's been suppressing, or Drew needs to go so far that he can't come back from it, or something needs to happen that makes this feel important beyond just another championship defense. The boos on SmackDown were the audience telling WWE that they're tired of the status quo. They're tired of predictable booking. They're tired of champions who don't evolve. They're tired of being told who they should cheer for instead of being given characters that naturally earn their support. And until the situation with Cody particularly concerning until they're willing to make real changes to how Cody Rhodes is presented, it's been less than a year since his WrestleMania triumph, and we're already at the point where significant portions of the crowd are actively rejecting him. That's not normal wear and tear on a championship run. That's a sign that something is fundamentally broken in how this character is being presented. The watch will always be a symbol of Cody's connection to his father, and that's beautiful. But using it as a prop in a wrestling storyline requires a level of commitment to authentic emotion that WWE seems unwilling or unable to provide. You can't go halfway with something that personal. You're either all in or you shouldn't do it at all. Final question for the comments, and this is the big one. What needs to happen in the Cody versus Drew match for this feud to feel satisfying? What's the finish that makes all of this worthwhile? Because right now, I have no idea how WWE resolves this in a way that fixes Cody's crowd reaction problems. Look, I want Cody Rhodes to succeed. I want his championship reign to be remembered as something special. But right now, it's not working, and pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. WWE needs to make changes, Cody needs to evolve, and the audience needs to be given a reason to care again. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen, but those boos on SmackDown were impossible to ignore, and they should be impossible for WWE to ignore too. If you made it